I'm saying this thing because it's not sufficient to just theorize if you don't have mass presence. Revolution is about the people. It's about uh, being able to speak the language of the people. Now, we went to the Free State government, our own government, if I may say, because in the Free State we don't have a GNU, a provincial government of unity. It's all an ANC-led government, but we march to our own government to say to demand solutions. And let me also touch on one of the suggestions we proposed to government because comrades, we must not theorize endlessly. At some point, we need to be able to give concrete solutions. Lenin always charged us to give concrete analysis of concrete solution. Comrade Zaki spoke of massive public employment program. Now, one of the first thing we proposed as the Youth League is that we need an adjustment budget. The Premier by the 31st must present an adjustment, 31st of August, present an adjustment budget that takes into considerations all of these things that I will touch on. The first thing we proposed as the ACU click in the Free State, a one of its own kind, what we have referred to or termed as the Public Employment Authority. Now, what would be the role of this Public Employment Authority? It would it would integrate all public employment initiative already existing, coordinate it in one office, and give it expansionary mandates. You'd know that currently you have the EPWP, the CPW, EPWP, the EPWP is under Public Works. You have the Community Works Program, it's under COCTA, and your presidential employment programs. So you have pockets of public employment schemes. And we're saying in the first instance, the proposal we raised, because we were told that there's a question here. Okay, no. Let me not deal with the questions. We'll look at questions later. But we're saying, as part of responding to the crisis of youth unemployment, especially in our province, let's create an authority that brings together all public employment programs, all public employment initiative into one umbrella, coordinated in the office of the Premier. That would have called it the Public Employment Authority that brings together all of these public employment initiatives and begin to standardize it and pay them what, of course, we would call minimum wage. Would have called it in government the the minimum wage. I know you comrades would speak about the living wage, because if you check the payment varies. Other people are paid less and so on and so forth. So we're saying that the first proposal that we came with would have been that we proposed, comrades, the Free State Industrialization Fund. Now, we were told to have been we've been told to have been taught historically that austerity means cut in public spending, especially on health and education. And the latter speaker would have touched upon them, would have touched upon a cut on social spending. But here in the Free State, we have a very abnormal situation wherein um, departments responsible for job creation, because comrades, we wanted to restrict ourselves to the crisis of youth unemployment, and we're coming with practical solutions to address the question of youth unemployment. We did not want to deal with other um, questions that society faced with. We don't want to enter into ideological questions, but we know that the economy is the base, the center, and periphery, the superstructure is everything, is anything that surrounds itself with the economy. So I wanted to deal with these questions of the economy first. And we were saying to our own government The Free State government's budget, more than 70% of it goes to two departments, goes to health and education. And departments that are responsible for economy or job creation, which is district in our province, is given 1.4% of the budget. We're saying that thing is abnormality. There's no way that if there is no way that there's no way that you are going to create job or economic opportunities if you don't invest in the economy. And we're saying to government, comrades was speaking what we did on the ground. We organized a march. We can send you videos. We've sent the spokesperson the videos to see this is what we've been doing on the ground, creating necessary social pressure for our own government to respond to that. Now we're saying at least in the immediate and intervening period, set aside 5 billion on investment. The Free State has two industrial parks. There's one industrial park in Thabo Mfutsanyana in Kwakwa, and there's another one in Botshabelo. We're saying as part of reindustrialization, put money aside, the 5 billion in the first instance for revitalization and resuscitation of those industrial parks. Then, of course, we were speaking about questions of research and development and how we're able to do it. You know, even industrialization, comrades, you don't want to enter into theoretical discussions about protective measures. For example, we were saying in the very same memo that if we are to resuscitate these industrial parks, you need to protect them, put protective measures. In the first instance, you use the leverage of government procurement to save these industries. So we're saying that the Free State government must be able to put aside money for industrialization and research and development, because, comrades, you know that our approach must not be thumb sucking, must not be things that are not research based. So that is also the proposal that we came as part of what do we do about the questions of youth unemployment. The other one that we wrote in the memorandum was the gazetting of the Youth Procurement Charter. We're saying the experience that we have here, especially in our province, and of course it might be general experiences that youth procurement is always a discretionary event. There is no binding legal tools to ensure that young people are given businesses and work. So we of course we proposed that our own government must gazette the youth procurement charter, and that youth procurement charter must set aside at least 40%, must set aside 40% into giving young people businesses. But we are going to request also departments to report on the same procurements, to look into to report how are they able to distribute all of this question. The other question that we proposed in our memorandum, comrades, I'm speaking about things that we're doing, we're doing. Bear in mind that we agree with the analysis of youth unemployment, and we do not want to lament and repeat what everyone knows here. The question is, what then do we do to resolve them? The other proposal in the memorandum, we can share the memorandum, comrades, for the convenience, for indulgence of participants here. We raised, comrades, that we need to introduce the basic income grant. We'll pilot it in the province here. Our own organization, the ANC, would have resolved on the basic income grant, and the experience is that if you looked at the COVID relief fund, in the COVID relief fund, uh, in the COVID relief fund, the 350, in our view, that was an experiment on the basic income grant, because I think it would have reached about 11 million South Africans, the 350. Now we're saying we need our own basic income grant for at least people not in employment, in training, um, what we call NETT. We said we demand the basic income grant for at least 100,000 young unemployed graduates, particularly graduates and post-matric, and providing them with 1.2 stipends, conditions on the participation aggregated programs and so on. Yeah, comrades were just saying that these young people who are looking for jobs were able to give holistic 350 to people who are sitting on the ground. So we're saying, well, let's also create a basic income grant. We're piloted here in the province and give at least a stipend of 1,200 rands to all young people that are graduates and so on, such that they are able to uh, uh, be able to print CVs and everything. And of course, other things. We in the Free State we have what we call the Free State Skills Development Institute. We propose on what needs to be done. We call for youth economic growth forums and so on. In summary, Chair, what we are trying to say here, perhaps as the ANC click in the Free State, is that you cannot win the revolution if you don't go to the ground and demand and bring your people along. We're demonstrating here that we are not even sitting on our laurels. You know, if you know the NCU clique historically, you would know that the expectation would have been that we clap hands for whatever the ANC government is doing. We do everything. But this youth clique that we lead today, if you check, go to all social media platforms, go to our not armchair critics, we're on the ground ensuring that we do many things for young people. So that is basically our proposal, chairperson of the session, that we, of course, are going to welcome the discussions, and comrades must take us head on other things. And of course, we agree with basically what the analysis would have said about, or the chair screen is on now. When the chair screen is on, it's like if you're on the platform and the chair comes to you. But chair, in summary, we're just saying to our colleagues that our comrades that um, um, let's bring the people along. Let's engage each other on the basis of the proposal that we did. And of course, we can enter into theoretical discussions and ideologies, but we wanted to show you concretely what is it that the ANC Click is doing on the ground to ensure that we attend to questions of youth unemployment. That's what we did in the Free State. We did not go and sing Sarafina. We marched to our own government, demanding that our own ANC government in the province must attend to issues of youth unemployment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Sizwe, for that intervention. Comrade Sizwe says, look, he's trying to deal with the question of questions, what is to be done. He says it's all well and good to theorize and bring forth the questions of ideology, but in the final analysis, concrete steps must be taken. And he says their organization has begun doing that. Without wasting time, I'll give it over to Comrade Terence. Fighter Terence, over to you. You are muted, Comrade Terence. Please unmute.
Oh, thank you very much, the chairperson of the session. Let me take this opportunity to greet members of the SAFTU which are present. I'm saying the protocol, it is observed. And let me take this opportunity to greet the national convener of the EFF Youth Command, Commissar Sitlelon, the national coordinator, and Naledi Chiro, Commissar Naledi Chiro, and then also to greet the Gauteng provincial leadership, the provincial convener, Meli Gewashe, and the provincial coordinator, Agnes Ramalep, of which is where we are live now in Johannesburg. My name is Terence Lang. I'm serving under the sub-regional EFF leadership in Johannesburg. So I can say we are appreciating this platform because it seeks to dissect what we are having in our minds as young people in this country. But I have concern that the previous speaker has spoken as a member of the ANC Youth League, but has not touched on the issue that the government led by the president of the ANC is planning to spend the 700 million on the national dialogue in order to organize the old age group to go and eat the endomines lunch and discuss problems of young people, or even worse, to sleep in those in that dialogue. We're concerned because this is a government that is willing to spend 700 million, but when it comes to say there's an issue of employment backlog, there is no response to that. We're told of budget constraints. If you check, not so long ago, the Gauteng provincial government returned over 1.8 billion to the national treasury because of that they believe the money cannot be used for anything, or there was just an unnecessary underspending of that particular money. So these are types of the problems we are faced with, because if I would make an example in Gauteng, Soweto Township, we have had several cases of food poisoning, where we have many of qualified health professionals which are sitting at home because they are not having any employment opportunity, because the government has no plan. If government can be able to return 1.8 billion back to the national treasury when we have a problem of this nature in the province, that makes us to question to what extent this type of a government is responsive. Issues are main. We are not going to dilly-dally around this topic of young people's unemployment, because it's a man-made crisis by the current government. For instance, if we are going to, I heard this other speaker, the first speaker, Zagimdu, was saying that there are people who are staying in Santen. That is a naive remark, because let's be honest, the government has borrowed money from the International Monetary Fund in 2020, and also the World Bank. So what we as the EFF Youth Command, in critiquing and understanding what it's meant by borrowing from this neoliberal institution, is because we are indebting the country. And then when you take a loan from IMF, you must recall that is what we call prior actions, or rather the structural benchmarks, which the government of that particular country must enter into with the IMF. For instance, there will be discussions around the changing of tax administration. If you check the current at the current moment now, the taxes increased to 15%. One will say, it's inflation, as the first speaker was saying. What? These are man-made crises who are being indebted by Western forces under the pretext of to say this is financial aid that must help us to respond to the issues which we are faced with. But of course, the economic freedom fighter cardinal pillars are they're very clear. They're speaking about the nationalization of our mineral resources. I mean, if you would understand the economic structure, is that we have a primary sector, with the secondary sector, tertiary sector, quaternary, but the primary sector of ours is not functional. We have raw materials which have been taken out of the country and coming back as a processed good. I mean, what is the use of taking me to a university to do jewelry, but only to make me feel like a privilege is when you are wearing an American Swiss with a mineral that comes from the very same land you are in. So that is what the nationalization aims or seeks to actually speaks of, to say, let us have our own private primary sector, which we ourselves are going to be the ones that processes these raw materials in our country. And of course, when we go to the secondary sector, that's where we're speaking about the manufacturing. But we must not forget the partner or the tertiary as the either to restructure our finances, because if we are saying we're nationalizing our banks and our mines, we must be able to also to understand that the quaternary sector, which speaks to research, or rather the education level of it, must be directed to understand. I mean, even I can say now all of us who are seated here, we are working on the mineral resources, which the education system that we have today, we can't even list all the mineral resources South Africa has. We have been told we have gold, we have been told to have platinum, we have been told to have all these resources, but it's few of us that can identify and say this type of mineral the country has. That's why we can even have a fake gold thinking that we're having an original one. So we must go to the issues of education. Of course, the youth unemployment is orchestrated or by the current government due to its incompetence, and we will not lie. I mean, how do you justify that you are going to gather old age group people and spend 700 million to discuss the issues of young people? I mean, for instance, now you check health professionals in South Africa, they are required to pay an annual fee to the EHPSA, but some of them now remain deregistered from EHPSA because of they have not managed to pay annual fee, and they are unemployed. You understand? So those are the issues that's why I was happy when the EFF in Parliament passed the motion that there must be a student debt relief to respond to the issues of young people who their qualifications are being held by the universities. I mean, there's no justification that why don't you issue me any form of means for me to be eligible to the labor market. But those are the issues that now the current government is failing to resolve. We are going to probably through our own spaces where we discuss this proposal as to respond to the issue of young people's unemployment, is that amongst them is that young people must understand that I was listening to the speak of the ANC Youth League. That's why we are very disappointed. The ANC Youth League is very toothless. We are even amazed that it still exists, that it's something else. So how do you justify that you are going to have 350s being given to young people in South Africa to respond to the socio-economic predicament the young people are facing? It's illogical. It actually shows that one doesn't understand what is happening in this country, because how on earth that you are going to have a government, for instance, you loan money from World Bank, you loan money from World Bank or International Monetary Fund in order for you to disperse 350s. That is very illogical, because when you indebt yourself as a country, you must understand that the very same government, when it's indebted, it owes a certain entity. And then at what expense? That's why we are being imposed of VAT increases, because the government is trying to build a revenue collection by all means necessary to cover its own debts. Understand? So these are the problems that we are faced with. Not people who are staying in Sante, with problems of neoliberal institutions from the West, which are US based, the very same country that is bullying us and cutting our aids for HIVs. They are indebting us, and the very same government just went there to say we need more money to have infrastructural development. The infrastructure of South Africa has collapsed because of microscopic beneficiaries of the Association of Nepotistic Criminals. I call them so ANC, because there's nothing that they are actually doing, these comrades, rather than having to organize themselves to actually continue to perpetuate the struggle of the young people in this country. The previous speaker spoke of many issues of which I would say there's no reason or a young person who understands the current problem of this country can affiliate himself with the ANC, because it has failed. We're hoping that the ANC Youth League, if you check when the president of the EFF, Julius Malema, he was radical to an extent that he threatened the ANC Youth League, the ANC leadership on issues of the youth. The current one is toothless. So the solutions are there in terms of to say let us avoid to borrow from these institutions which are coming under the pretext of helping us but indirectly indebting us, because we are going to have where the state-owned entities are now into to say they are going to some certain proportion will be controlled outside the country. You understand? So the young people's unemployment is it's a topic that it needs us to understand that that's why when we are members of EFF, we use Marxist tools of analysis or Lenin or Fanon applications to understand the economy and how how we're affected by this. But it's going to be useless if we're going to theorize about who knows the superstructure and the base of what those things are not mattering. What we are using now is that South Africa is having mineral resources. And when it has mineral resources, we're saying that let's at least have not private sector owning at least everything that belongs to the majority of South Africa. I mean, was 60 million of South Africans were owned by some few group of people in Stellenbosch or in the Oppenheimers. You understand? So, and then you would find that someone will say, no, we can't do this thing, we can't do this thing due to budget constraints. I mean, the country is wealthy with mineral resources that we can extract and restructure our education system for us to understand that which is under the ground of this country. Because we don't want the education system that is going to just make people to graduate to become good employees who can think but can always remember to say, I must sign a register, this is how you're elected. We want young people who can think. For instance, if you can check the TVET sector is underlooked. There is some serious maladministration in that sector by the ANC cadres. We've seen where they were exposed by irregular appointments of in the sitters to say these are proxy alignment appointments. That's why I was saying the ANC is an association of nepotistic criminals, because you would find a child of Gwede Mandash being a chairperson of sitters. There's no reason of to say why or on what merits because of loyalist being a loyalist of the ANC. The same also national dialogue is not constituted by people who can actually represent the young people. It's just people who are close to the president of the ANC or they are loyalists of the ANC. So we are not going to solve any problems if we're going to have this current administration. For instance, some will say what the EFF will seek to achieve to respond to the young people's unemployment. We're heading towards the local government elections, in as much that we saw the electoral decline last year due to other arrangements, which were testing moments for our organization. We were saying, we're encouraging the young people in South Africa to say, let us make sure that if the 1976 generation took the stones and then went to the streets to fight for this democracy that we are actually in, let us then make it or take it upon ourselves to exercise our democratic rights to vote for a capable government and a responsive government. There are many instances where we are responding to issues which will require government. If you check currently in the Eastern Cape, the president and the members of a central command team went out to go to the Eastern Cape to how they can assist the people of Eastern Cape. But we are told that alleged the premier is on a leave because the child has went to the initiation school. If that is the truth, it's fine, it's a family matter, but at the wrong time. You understand? So we are here, we're available, we are assisting, and our if you were to read, the founding principles or the cardinal pillars of the EFF on their own, they are responsive. For instance, nationalizing strategic sectors of this economy will mean that we're going to be able to build the state capacity and also have public institutions being financed very well so that they can deliver public service or service and goods in South Africa. And also, if earlier today we saw that we wrote to the EFF, to the Parliament actually, to request that why there's an issue around NSFAS. NSFAS also is a problem because some of students have completed their qualifications, but the NSFAS has not paid their fees. So those students now, their qualifications are still with the universities that they qualified at. So then it's a question of to say, what is happening in this sector? And then we were told that there was an appointment of financial service providers. This is the same thing that has happened in 2023 when there was the likes of Bonaraco, which were exploitative on the pockets of the students. So young people's problems are complex, but they need a capable government which will respond positively to their issues, not to always. I mean, they insist the youth league. They spend time with the leaders which are leading this country in government. You'd wonder what is it that they're engaging in. I mean, if the previous speaker of the NC could not even touch on why he's not worried about the 700 million that is to be spent when we're given these problems. For instance, also we have a backlog of unemployment as a result of there's a program which is there for health professionals, which we call it community service. The government takes people to do nursing, to do radiography, to do environmental health, but at the center of that, they don't know how many people when will graduate or to have those people to be placed to make sure that they stabilize the health sector of this country. But nonetheless, they just go and propose budgets to cut monies which have to respond to the health-related issues in this country or social development in this country. So those are the, sorry? You see, so those are the issues that were faced with. The people have been, the health professionals have been taken to school. After that, there's no any plan. This is a graduate, he graduates, and then after graduating, you don't get a placement on the first year of your, after you've graduated. You are not able to pay the annual fee to the EHPSA. Then you get deregistered. By virtue of being deregistered on the platform of, or you can't be practicing without paid the annual fee. Then it means now you have a problem. You can't be employed. So, and for instance, if you check the TVET sector, as I was speaking about the TVET sector, the TVET sector should, this government pay attention to the TVET sector and make sure that universities and TVET colleges have the same benefits who are going to solve the problems of this country, because the universities they are more focused on the theory, and then the TVET sector is focused on the practice. So if we're going to have theory and practice being together, then we're going to be able to resolve the issues of this country. For instance, I saw there are a TVET student who had designed some other dress to some person and said, no, these are the things that we can actually do. For instance, you would ask yourself, where is the uniform of police coming from? Where is the uniform of military coming from? Who are the people make? It's mere things. I mean, even a mere teaspoon or a toothpick, those are the things that create jobs. But we're just looking at them, and someone will wake up trying to sound relevant and say, is the EFF says no, foreigners must come to come to South Africa. That is not, it's absolute nonsense, because there's no practicality about it. You find that there's a Ubers, there's Bolt, there's InDrive, which has these guys as part of the cheap labor that we say no. Don't hire these people, as because you are avoiding to hire a South African, because you are avoiding vicarious liabilities or liabilities entirely for a South African that will have labor rights should they be injured on duty. So those are the things which we're faced with in this country. So when we say also, like for instance, that we need that Africa must find itself to make use of its own mineral resources. So we're not saying when we say United States of Africa as well, we are saying everyone must just come and unite in South Africa. Of course, the Pan-African Parliament is in South Africa. The African Union was once led by an official of state in South Africa as a chairperson. The former is the wife of, I think, former President Zuma. So why can't we make use of these legislative bodies as an African continent to respond to our issues? I will make an example that a United States of Africa is not really a problem. If all of us, if you went to a campus, you find that a campus or a university, some universities have 4 different campuses. So you find that your university, your campus is maybe Dorfontein campus, the other one is Soweto, the other one is Auckland Park. All of you, you are University of Johannesburg students, for instance. So when you are when you are from Dorfontein, you go to Auckland Park. A student who's registered there, as long as you have entered properly, you can't have a problem with that person. Can't even tell, okay, today there are many students of Dorfontein in our campus. So if we are going to solve this type of things as South Africa, because at the same time of that, we're leading the conversation around unification of this continent. And then young people must participate and understand that we must not be misled by what others are saying. We must be able to exercise our democratic rights and install a government that is going to be responsive to the problems that South African young people are faced with. I mean, now if we were seated on over 45%, I think, of young people who are unemployed and remains in serious socioeconomic backlog, they can't participate. The printing of whatever that has to be required for one to look for a job, it's very expensive. So the issue here is because we have irresponsive government, but this government that is preoccupied by elite pact arrangements, tendering, those kind of things. Because tendering also is part of the system, is part of what we actually are condemning, because you find that service providers don't get paid, and then the government now, the municipality, that must go and borrow. For instance, if you go to check the issues of Incomas municipality, their salaries are not paid there. The service providers are not paid there. Even the municipality is willing to go and loan 100 million approximately from Standard Bank. So you see, this the problem is the leadership crisis, and then who is getting to serve is the young people, and then the ANC Youth League is very quiet. Of course, they are closed. They are the ones who are closed. As well as the EFF Youth Command, we are clear to agitate to say, make sure that you exercise your democratic rights. You see already our demonstration. We are ready to govern. Please, through democratic rights, discharge us the responsibilities to govern, so that we can create and build state capacity at the local government to demonstrate that we are more fit to deal with the issues of the national government. Because, I mean, we're going to have national government elections in 5 years' time. Already we are going to suffer. There is the tax which has been recently been increased. There's monies which are continue to be borrowed from international financial institutions, and those problems are happening at the problems of costing our pockets. And then, of course, when they come, the ANC or the current government will be able to say, now it's time for digital vibes. So, but at what expense? Because now when it's time for payback, the government has no proper measures through SARS to collect the revenue, rather than they target me and you who must go and buy certain goods and services to certain providers of such goods or services. So we have a problem. We have a problem of borrowing. We have a problem of a responsive government, and then the problem of underspending. How, I mean, those are the problems that we can say they are there, and then they are making us to remain unemployed. And then, in order for us to resolve them, is either through meaningful engagements like this one that we're having, to make us understand that it is not actually that we are lazy as young people, or who are not capable, who have went to school. Some of us, our qualifications are still with those particular universities. Some of us, the NSFAS has not paid the fees of ours. So it's a problem that we are faced with. We need to fix the administration of the government administration of this country in order to resolve issues. And also the GBV case is so that the part and parcel of this conversation we're going to have today is the issues of around GBV. Understand?
Yeah, move towards a conclusion. You are way
Yeah,
over.
no, I'm about to conclude. Yes, I was saying also, as I was concluding, that we have problems of GBV-related issues in this country because of how the justice system is corrupt or is corrupted in a way. If you have something to offer, then the next person will not be able to get justice. So at this point, it's like only a blind person can be the one to deliver us a justice. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Fighter Terence. You have touched on multiple issues there. The issue of loans from international financial institutions, the issue of the 700 million that is due to be spent on the national dialogue. You've spoken about budget constraints. You have spoken about the importation of things that would otherwise, in a properly organized economy, would otherwise be produced in the country and therefore create jobs and thereby create jobs, and so on and so forth. So thanks, Fighter Terence, for that intervention. And now I open it to the floor for comrades, for questions, comments to the panelists, and then thereafter they will come back to respond to the questions that are posed to them, and then we close it. So I'm ready to take hands, comrades, those who are who have, I see, Comrade D said so. Over to you, Com.
Greetings and thank you very much, Chairperson of the session, and greetings to all the comrades in the platform. And let me appreciate the comprehensive inputs by the presenters. I think fundamentally, the reason why we're in this situation is because of a generally weak and divided working class in South Africa. Our working class in South Africa is currently leaderless, and in such a case, you'll find that capital is then becomes in charge, and we are unable to even discipline capital. So I think at the center of our problems, we really have to appreciate what SAFTU is doing to unite all progressive forces. But I think it must go even beyond this. We need to see a united front, both in terms of Black people and also in terms of the working class. It's necessary. Number one, at the center of our problems, particularly that affects also the youth, is the issue of land. Without land, people cannot thrive. So it is important that we embark on a massive land redistribution campaign that ensures that young people in particular have access to land for industrial, commercial, residential, and traditional purposes. Secondly, we need to ensure that we transform the economy. And this needs a united front, because when you are divided like this, EFF, you are saying this, ANC, when you are saying this, we don't agree with this one. That is when capital, because capital is united. Capital is far ahead in terms of its ideological position. Now,
No, but
transform
equally,
the economy.
we can't agree with the ANC government. We can't agree with the ANC government. We've given
Comrade Tabi, you'll get your opportunity to speak. Let you to speak.
He must not be neutral. He knows
Yeah,
the truth.
but you'll raise your hand and tell him that, precisely that. Sure.
Would you allow the current speaker the chance to express his views so that you can be able to have direction and debate on from an informed position? But you coming here and intervening, you are disrupting the entire procedure. So we will not get to the bottom of this. We are trying to come up with solutions as to what needs to happen. But all of you are here using this platform to mock and to
Comrade ANC. I have it under control, my leader. Thanks. Let Comrade Tisa make.
Okay, thank you very much for the protection. I appreciate the protection. Transform the economy. I think I'm happy with what Comrade Sizwe from the Free State has indicated in terms of focusing on industrialization, and he's much more practical about it. To say in the Free State, we've got 2 industrial parks. How do you then invest money in terms of, because industrialization is important because you don't want to import job opportunities to other countries. Reserve certain economic activities for South African youth through use of legislation. In the Free State, I know that we have just adopted a bill, an act that begins to say municipalities must be in charge of their local spaces so that we're able to dilute, to remove domination by foreigners, particularly in certain business activities like sponsorship, saloon. But that must be a national policy. Incentivize enterprises that employ the youth. So there needs to be an incentive for those enterprises that give opportunities to young people. Transform the education system by making sure that in particular, you have what we call schools for skills, so that our people are then able to actually be able to use their hands to work. And then in terms of that particular education, we must also include basic business management, include, for an example, Marxist theory from a crash. Young people from crash must then be ideologically conscientized, and then history of struggle, so that when people, when they are patriotic, you'll see in countries like Cuba and China, when people are patriotic, they are more likely to be united in terms of what they want to achieve. I've already spoken about massive political conscientization, and what Comrade Sizwe says about the march yesterday, it is part of that conscientization. It won't happen in boardrooms. And Lenin taught us that in order for you to ensure that you advance the revolution, you need the people along. So how do you get them along if they are not politically and ideologically ready to do that? So you need to be on the ground and be with them. Review your macroeconomic policy. Our macroeconomic policy in South Africa is not in line with what we want to achieve in terms of the Freedom Charter. So it must be reviewed to ensure that, number one, you nationalize the South African Reserve Bank, to ensure that you also have specific banks that are able to give funding to young people, in particular, specific young people who want to embark on entrepreneurial capacities. Break monopolies. That macroeconomic policy must be bold in that it must say you must break these monopolies. You don't want monopolies because monopolies are bad for an economy. And then lastly, fix borders and massively deport illegal immigrants. Those will be my inputs. Thank you very much, Kalebo.
Thank you very much, Comrade Tisetso, for the concrete intervention. It will be Comrade Chabeli, it will be Comrade Bloko, and then Comrade Mametos Bey, and then Comrade Pala, in that order.
Thank you very much, Comrade Chair, and let me greet all the comrades on the platform and observe protocol. Comrades, I am sure by now we have a plethora of diagnoses which were made even on this same platform as to what contributes to youth unemployment and what makes the youth of South Africa to be the face of unemployment when we are such a bigger chunk of the population. Comrades would know that a notable number of young people are in what we call needs. They are not in education, they are not in employment, they are not in any training as a result of a few structural barriers such as connectivity, your transport, access to quality education, and many other things that are contributing to such. But also, comrades, you would know that the latest statistics were showing that 15% of young people saw an increase on related youth suicide, and that over 70% of surveyed youth indicated that young people are severely challenged with mental health problems, and that causes a distress to a lot of them. And I would like to sponsor a few interventions on what is it which we need to do. And I would start first with education and say that we need to modernize our curriculum and link the learning outcomes to job readiness. As you would have heard that comrades are saying, some of these young people graduate and go back to sit back at home doing nothing. But I think, comrades, if we can introduce coding and robotics and financial literacy into our secondary and TVET school, and also ensure that we invest in digital classrooms, that will also assist us to ensure that a learner, for instance, from the dusty streets of Mahlatse does not see a computer for the first time when they get to a university, and therefore struggle with even their academic work. Because I have reflected on the mental health challenges that young people are facing in our country, I would also sponsor a contribution under health that we need to improve access to youth-specific health services, whereby we partner with mobile clinics to ensure that we expand youth-friendly services in existing clinics, because young people, some of them resort to suicide as a result of, others would go to social platforms and vent and they would not get assistance. But if we can ensure that we have facilities which are youth friendly for young people to can approach them, vent and be assisted, that will reduce a lot of these mental challenges which young people are faced with. And sometimes as a result, that leads to them being perpetrators or victims of gender-based violence. On the economy, comrades, I would sponsor that we need to double our youth-owned formal enterprises. I think it will be prudent for all the provinces, and this is a call that I'm making to the ANC Youth League, and I am very much happy with what Comrade Sizo was presenting here, as they are tangible tactical interventions. But if we can establish the youth enterprise development hubs in all 44 districts and integrate them with the local SMMEs development units, so that we stop complaining about our municipal LEDs being useless and not doing anything for the youth, that will also really help. And comrades, I was at the Salga Lokgotla not so long ago, where we were reflecting about climate change and just transitioning, and where we were encouraged that all of us must ensure that in whatever that we do and execute, especially at a level of government, we are climate change resilient, be it is your IDP, whatever, but just ensure that you are acclimatizing to this transition that we are already witnessing in some of the areas of our country. And I want to say, in terms of the EPWP under the Green Youth Brigades, let's also provide climate skills training to these young people so that ultimately they are able to create their own jobs. And lastly, comrades, on governance, I would just say we need to really, really institutionalize the youth voice, especially in decision making. I think if we can strengthen the youth desks at the municipal level and ensure that they monitor the implementation of the integrated youth development strategy, that will really assist us, because it's not helping us to always say mochapalong, and say, okay, not only youth must be deployed into political space, but they must also be deployed into administrative spaces where they can make impactful changes. But we are not aligning them to these spaces for them to practically execute some of the strategies that they might have, which can change this pandemic we're faced with of unemployment. And to Comrade Caesar specifically, I would say to you, my comrade, please ensure that in the Free State, we establish a youth employment war room. I already heard that you are saying all these departments must come back to report and give progress as to what is it which they are doing in terms of creating employment for young people. Also, I would like us to have a labor market readiness campaign. You already reflected on the number of graduates which needs to be given incentives, but I also think if we can also have a public private employment compact so that our leaders do not only stand on podiums and say people from the private sector must plow back because some of them are getting jobs from government, and they talk about social responsibility to ensure that this social responsibility or this plowing back does not get to be pocketed by our leaders. Let's have a public-private employment compact so that such funds, if the private sector is investing, they land into the right hands and the right pockets. Thank you very much, Comrade Chair. That's my submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Chavedi. Comrade Andile, before you come through, can I request that we cap it at 3 minutes because there are many hands of people who want to, comrades who want to contribute, and if the contributions are lengthy, we may have a situation where the meeting ends without other comrades having contributed. So yeah, Comrade Block, over to you, and then come Comrade Mametlo, and then Comrade Pala, in that order.
No, thank you, Comrade Chairperson and facilitator of the session. I hope I will fight to be disciplined enough to do less than 3 minutes. And there are a few things to without any preamble. Appreciating, of course, this session of young people and engagements, how we can get through some of the challenges that confront us as a nation, as a country, and so on and so forth, depending how we understand it. There are just few things that I want to speak on, and I must be upfront that I've joined this session late due to the fact that I was attending another workshop on case handling and so on. One of the things that we must appreciate is how do we ensure that the Youth Employment Services Program, which is now called YES, is a program that we can be effectively utilized for training, experiential exposure of young people to the working world, you know. I think we can get a lot of good things out of the years. There are a lot of bad things, I must tell you, especially in the industries that we are organizing. But I must just mention it as one of in the recent past, where I work in Isuzu, formerly General Motors, I can confirm that there are a lot of young people who have gained experiences and then therefore joined the employment and so on, including there in Isuzu. We are now using the youth recruitment process as our machinery. In the past, in the factories, people used to, you must bring someone, you must bring your family member, your son, your brother, in those factories and in mines. But I think the YES program is a good initiative, but it has its own problems. I must mention that. I can't do factories and in mines, but I think the YES program is is a good initiative, but it has its own problems. I must mention that. I can't talk about a lot about it, Comrade Masoko, because of time. The second issue that I want to question of both in the context of ensuring that we do away with tender. We ensure that the state and national take full responsibility for services and employ people. And this I'm talking about it in the context of the very same. The last speaker was talking about innovations, and to the extent that young people are talking about entrepreneurs. Come on, God.
You had promised to be generous. You had
Yes.
3 minutes.
No, that was going to be my sincere last point. I mean, a point before that. So I'm talking about that. We need to talk about that. But let me just flag these things. The building of student youth or worker relations. Because young people, when they enter industries, there's a gap in terms of that. I think we must talk about that. The last issue that I think we must talk about at some stage. I see the messages and comments. We must close the gap, unite the young and the old. And we can learn from the old. We can also appreciate the energy of the young. I think the essence for me is that how do we make sure that we build that unity of purpose between young people and workers and older generations for the future of these young people? Because I do think that there's a sense that young people think that we are not going to listen to you, you failed, and therefore we've got all the answers to our problem. There's a sense from older people to say, but you are Rudy. You are not the young people that would want you to carry yourselves on, and so on and so forth. I see even on the commentary, on the chats, that thing keeps on coming. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks. Comrade President, Comrade Moral. Comrade Mohamed. Okay. Well, he's still gathering his thoughts.
He must unmute. He must unmute that guy.
I'm not, sorry, Mazu, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Very briefly, leadership.
Sure.
Thank you for interventions of all the comrades. Just for me, my concern is that, when you listen to comrades of ANC Youth League, I must be honest, theirs is a very hopeless cause, because if you think unemployment is just issue of coordination, organizational question of bringing few departments or initiatives under one umbrella, it's hopeless. That's the reason that they themselves foresee at most 100,000 jobs in a crisis which involve millions of unemployed people. When you take the whole unemployed population, you are talking over 12 million. Now, the comrades of the EFF are really speaking to the issue of the mixed economy. And I think that really misses the point, in my view, because the thing is, they're not really grappling with the political economy of it, right? In a sense that the unemployment, I think Comrade Zaki tried to point that out, is rooted in the inherent tendencies of capitalism, is functional to capitalism, and that is really because South African economy is part of the world market created by division of labor. And in that division of labor, we are actually located as a neo-colonial capitalism that is only ever good as a source of colonial slavery and extractivism, right? Where you have the mining industries monopolized by predominantly foreign-owned multinationals alongside agriculture, which have basically condemned this country to a quarry and gardening, a quarry of raw minerals, a gardening of fruits and vegetables, all of which are distinct to markets in Europe, China, Australia, and wherever they are, where they're actually being processed. And on the base of capitalism, you're not going to have it any other way, because this very monopoly or foreign, or rather multinational operating that have monopolized ownership, by design have actually historically located their factories and manufacturing industries in those particular countries. So unless you are able to deal with that, because every mineral that leaves this country unprocessed, every vegetable, every food that leaves this country raw as it is actually exploitation of jobs. And that's the reason that you can't eradicate unemployment, which should be the task for all of us. And I think from that should flow a conclusion that it's not only just a question of nationalizing this or that industry, but actually taking a public ownership of all key sectors of the economy. Because the kind of sort of state capitalism and developmental capitalism, to use the language of the ANC, which I also hear sometimes communities of EFF pandering around, is to me the point, right? That when the apartheid state played that role in the 30s, it was in the context basically of shortage of capital, but also in the aftermath of the Second World War, massive destruction of value, where capitalist class actually required, right, state to intervene, where they couldn't invest in order to underwrite their industrialization and the subsidization. Today, the problem is not that. It's an overproduction, overcapacity that are key features of the organic crisis of capitalism. They are holding capital or cash of over 1.4 trillion. That requires investment, and that's the reason they are pushing for privatization of everything and so on. Thank you, Chair. And that, I think, is the essence of the problem. And that solution can only be provided by organized working class through a political organization that is committed to taking over the commanding heights of the economy on the basis of public ownership and democratic control and management of the working class. Thank you.
Please unmute, Comrade Pala.
Yes, thank you, Comrade Masuku, and other comrades. I know that you don't have time, but I just want to raise issues from a different angle. The youth in South Africa, there is a question of the drugs. And this is a very, very serious problem. And I'm happy that we have got the youth in this forum, those who have been giving input. But I just want to ask this question to say the question of drugs in this country is very serious. And you ask yourself, who's selling those drugs? And that is a big question, possibly. Some of the people, it has been alleged that people who are selling drugs, they are not the South Africans. And what is the government doing about this issue? I visited the 2 rehabilitation centers in Limpopo. Each was having more than 500 youth who have been coming as far as Free State and Northern Cape. And they are just coming to be so that they need to rehabilitate them. The question of drugs is a very serious issue. And I also want to challenge the youth that in terms of the money which has been given to the social grant, some of the youth, to my observation, when they get the money, that money is being used for drugs. And I think we need to teach the youth of this country to be very much responsible, because they are the future leaders of this country. What I've also observed in the social media, the people who are not South African, they are ridiculing us as the South African in terms of our behavior, the way we are doing things in this country. One other thing which I just want to share with yourself is that there was something which has been going on in the media, where the two South Africans were being arrested in Zimbabwe. They've been illegal. And the way the Zimbabwe responded, they are saying you cannot get into that country being illegal because Zimbabwe is not a banana republic. And I'm asking to say, what is happening to this country, to the ruling party in terms of controlling the borders? And if you cannot control the borders, how do you control the economy of this country? That in itself is a challenge, which I want the youth to look into that matter, so that at the end of the day, when we talk about these issues, we must also look into the question of the political will. I'm saying in this country, there is no political will. I've been looking into the issues of Burkina Faso, what is happening to Ibrahim Traoré, the way Burkina Faso is doing things. Can we learn how other countries are doing things? They are making sure that they beneficiate the minerals into their own country. They give money to the farmers. They are farming within their own. They produce food and they empower the youth. I'm saying we need to look into the issue of the political will. Where there is a political will, there will never be change. I'm that challenging the youth to say we need to make sure that we do have a government which will be having a political will to resolve the problem of this country. Thank you, Comrade Masuku.
Thank you, Comrade
Comrade Chair.
Yes.
I don't know if you can see my hand raised. I'm struggling to raise my hand. I don't know if you can see it on your side.
No, I can't see your hand, but you will come after Comrade Randan, Comrade Linda.
Oh, there, aye. Okay, fine.
Comrade President, over to you. Comrade Randan.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much, the spin doctor and the chairperson of the session. Yeah, no, there is a general consensus that we've developed from this particular forum on the microeconomic policies of the country, that the microeconomic policies that were championed by the governing party since 1994 were not working at all, were not in favor of the interest of the working class and the poor, which is the neoliberal policies. I will just summarize to say this economic ideology that emphasizes free market, deregulation and privatization is not working here in South Africa. Again, there is a problem of austerity measures, whereby the policy aimed at reducing government spending and debt is not working. It undermines state capacity to provide essential service. For an example, when the ANC took over power in 1994, because we'll speak about the ANC, not precisely because we hate the ANC, it's just precisely because it's the governing party. By the virtue of being the governing party, we'll keep on referring to the ANC. Even if another party, for an example, EFF, take over power in 2029, after 5 years, if they fail to implement the Freedom Charter provisions, we will criticize them to say, you promised us free education, you promised us land, but you have failed in that context. So, in summary, Comrade Chairperson of the session, again, the other issue that we want to emphasize is on the free education. If we had free education since 1994 in South Africa, which means the levels of high unemployment will be very much lower, because many people will be highly educated in South Africa. For an example, the 60% of unemployment rate in South Africa, the vast majority of them are young people with the qualification that are below metric, which means majority of them, they don't have qualification post-matric. They don't have qualifications from the tertiary level. Another thing that we want to emphasize is that the 2010 World Cup, in that particular period, immediately after we've been granted the rights to host the 2010 World Cup in 2004, we've seen a huge infrastructure development in that particular period. And many people in South Africa were hired in that particular 2004. We've seen a huge infrastructure development period between 2004 and 2010. But immediately after the 2010 World Cup, that particular exercise came to a standstill, as a result of which many companies in the construction sector retrenched precisely because there was no business. The government decided not to continue with the infrastructure development. I used to argue with many comrades to say South Africa, or the governing party, is the only party in the African continent that has inherited the world standard infrastructure in South Africa from the apartheid regime. Other countries in the African continent, when they took over power, there was nothing. For an example, there is a country in Africa called South Sudan. Yeah, there's a capital city called Juba. There's a gravel roads there. There is no tar road, precisely because they are starting their country from the scratch, although they have been destabilized by the current civil war in that particular country, but they've started from the scratch. But here in South Africa, we've never started from the scratch. But instead of developing the country, we've failed dismally in order to make sure that we create employment as a result of infrastructure development. Let me summarize the spin doctor.
Comrade President, your time. You are heading up 5 minutes now. Let's give us others a chance so that we can conclude.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Comrade Linda?
Evening, comrades. Thanks, Comrade Chair. Comrades, I'll be very brief, hoping to stay within the 3 minutes. Let's first deal with the issue of austerity measures, comrades, and privatization. It was not Zimbabweans that convinced Mbeki to privatize Eskom. We have load shedding in South Africa not because of Zimbabweans. We have load shedding in South Africa because of austerity measures and the need of the ANC to privatize everything in this country. We have potholes not because of Zimbabweans, because of the ANC that does not want to invest in this country, as Comrade Rendani has just mentioned. All these issues, comrades, let's point the finger of blaming towards the right people. It was not the Zimbabweans who convinced Mbeki to privatize, I repeat, to privatize Eskom. So let's not point fingers at the wrong people here, comrades. It's the ANC that closed the teachers' colleges. It's the ANC that closed the nursing colleges. It's not Zimbabweans that said the ANC should close those teachers' colleges and nursing colleges. So let's point the finger at the right people. The right people are the ANC. Now, comrades, I support the call by Comrade Zaki Mamdu that the way to resolve in this matter, and it addresses the point raised by the comrade from the ANC Youth League. It raises the question of balance of forces. Comrade Zaki raises the question of the Working Class Summit of 2018 and the resolutions that were taken then. I think we need to revisit those, comrades, because it's important, given where we find ourselves now, that the capitalist class is going further and further and fragmenting the working class. We've seen it with the rising tide of xenophobia of late. So, comrades, it's important that we sit here and realize the fact that all these programs that we are talking about that we need to fight for, we will only be able to fight for them if the working class has its own ideological and political independence. We cannot fight within these boardrooms of the capitalist class because that's where they dominate. The working class dominates through its own labor power, through its own working class youth and its own working class communities. It's time to bring those theaters together, workers on the shop floor, the working class youth and working class communities through a socialist civic. And that civic can come about through another call for another working class summit, comrade. We cannot be pointing fingers for the problems that are not created by the working class, point at another member of the working class. These problems of the working class are created by the capitalist class, and the finger needs to be pointing there, not at another member of the working class. As Comrade Rendani said, there was investment during 2010 and it stopped. Had that investment continued, building of roads, building of hospitals, building of every necessity that every South African needs, that would have created jobs, that would have never created xenophobia. People would not be pointing a finger at Zimbabweans. Comrades, we have a crisis as a working class, not just in South Africa. Trump himself uses the very same tactics in the US. We have the same crisis unfolding in Ireland. We have the same crisis unfolding in Britain of people pointing fingers at migrants. So let's stop that, comrades. I beg. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Linda, for that. And thank you very much, comrades who have contributed and those who have attended. I'll give each of the panelists 5 minutes just to wrap up, starting with Comrade Zaki, and then Comrade Sizwe, and then, of course, Comrade Terence, and then we will close it. Comrade Zaki?
Thank you very much, Comrade Chair. I'll try my best to be brief. Just keep me in check if I'm going overtime. Look, I think, let me say something clearly about the political options on the stage, because there are those who are here who are draped in green and gold, who simply cannot offer a way out of our crisis, no matter at which point or at any point, no matter how quality the rhetoric may come across. Let me also just say that as I take up this debate to challenge some of the other panelists and some of the views also in the room, it's not personal at all, comrades. Debate is never personal. And I have a great deal of respect for everyone here on the basis that we are people and we are together and we are trying our best to find ways of addressing the major crises of our time. But I must contest your ideas because it is ideas that have very real material implications for our people and for our future. And so it appears to me that both panelists, while they both started off and said that they agreed with the analysis that I provided, despite that, the comrades have largely missed the analysis entirely. Of course, the comrade from the Youth League, far more than the comrade from the EFF. If indeed they did agree, they would say, well, yes, capitalism sits at the roots of the crisis, and every other crisis is a ripple from that. And therefore, the comrade saying, yes, would go further to say, well, we must launch a mass workers' party and we must fight for socialism, and that is the solution. Because the problem here is that comrades have accepted the logic of capital itself. They have accepted that profit is the law of the day, and so the solutions that are being proposed fit into that framework. They are technical, they are about skills, they're about coordination, they're about investments and all of these things. But if those solutions and the real solutions are not about a political project to build socialism, then we are just predestining ourselves to reproduce crisis after crisis. And so let me speak plainly, comrades. The ANC, after 30 years in power, has not transformed the economy. It has managed the crisis and has diligently served the interests of international finance, of local monopolies, and the interests of an aspirant black bourgeoisie who emerged waving their struggle credentials post-apartheid. And so budget cuts, interest rate hikes, corruption, tenders, public looting, privatization, neoliberal policy, trade liberalization, outsourcing, tax cuts for the rich, brutality and violence against students, against communities, against workers. This is the living legacy of the ANC. It's there, it's the reason why we are having this discussion about the multitude of crises confronting young people. I will, of course, say that the role that the ANC played in the overthrow of the white supremacist regime in this country is and was and must always be recognized as absolutely immense. But since then, the organization is really nothing but a stumbling block in the way of permanent revolution. And we should appreciate their contributions in the history books and today withdraw all support for the contemporary administrators of capital. Now, comrades, the EFF, on the other hand, I must say, is not a revolutionary party. It is a progressive party. And I studied that manifesto in the last national elections, and I found that it was the best of the lot. In fact, it was the only actual social democratic manifesto that I saw. But still only the only social democratic at best, which renders its approach reformist, even though the system requires nothing but overthrow. I think the comrade from the EFF is absolutely right that we do have a problem of borrowing. And of course, we need to ask who are we borrowing from and why. And the comrade has outlined how we're borrowing from financial markets and institutions that really this very capitalist system empowers, and it relies on these institutions to prop itself up and to protect itself. And the reason why we're borrowing is because the state is no longer funded by taxing the rich or owning the commanding heights of the economy, but it's funded by debt. And it's not an accident, comrades. Debt is a tool to discipline the colonial world under the boot of capital. And it is very much the result of decades of neoliberal policy, of tax breaks for the rich, privatization of state assets, outsourcing of public services, and all of these things that we continue to see today through these independent private partnerships, which, and PPPs and all of these things. Now, the contradiction, I think, in the comrades' contributions is when it's stated that the government is unresponsive, and I agree, the government is unresponsive. But the question is, who is the government unresponsive to? Because it is very responsive to capital. It is responsive to investors, to banks, to credit agencies. It's responsive to Stellenbosch. It's responsive to the World Bank, to the IMF, to Santon, and of course, it's only unresponsive to the working class. That is what we expect of a capitalist government. Now, on the point of nationalization, I think we just need to ask ourselves here, what kind of nationalization are we gunning towards? Because if nationalization means replacing white CEOs with black CEOs in state-owned enterprises that are still run for profit, then really that means very little. It's a cosmetic change to an exploitative system. We must be clear that we don't only want nationalization, we want democratic control by workers and communities, and not just by state bureaucracy or by political cronies, certainly. Because the problem here, comrades, is not just a problem of ownership, but it's a problem of class power. So if our vision of nationalization means that the state continues to operate like a company, as we see in China, for example, where it is disciplining workers, it's cutting costs, it's paying bonuses to executives and all of these things, then all we've done is create a new capitalist elite on top of the same system that dresses itself up in perhaps in revolutionary regalia and all of these things. And I think we need to say very clearly, we don't need a new manager class. We need a new system. We need one that abolishes capitalist social relations altogether and builds socialism. And no doubt, to talk to the importance of the EFF really is that the most militant layers of the working class and working class youth in this country can be found there, especially within the student command as well. And at this juncture, what that means is that much of the substance of revolution lies there. But we must make no mistake that for the top brass leadership of the EFF, nationalization and taking power and all of these things is about capturing the same capitalist system. It's about giving it a new layer of managers, and it's about state capitalism under political elites. Now, I don't say that as some sort of indictment on the rank and file, nor even many of the cadre of the EFF. and especially those of the student command who we've engaged on multiple occasions. But it is the politics and aspirations of its top brass which makes the EFF a party of elite accumulation and not popular emancipation. And we must reject that. And we must encourage its own members, in fact, to do the same, because we don't want a commander-in-chief. In fact, we should not want a commander-in-chief, comrades. We want to be the masters of our own destiny. And unfortunately, that won't happen under the EFF. But in spite of, can you indulge me 1 minute, Comrade Chair?
Move towards closure.
In spite of that critique of the political options on the stage, I think it's still true that we do need a united front. But we cannot unite under the wrong ideas, or else we are essentially predestining ourselves to be in perpetual crisis. So again, our united front, the one that will drive us forward, is the Mass Workers' Party on a revolutionary socialist program. We will unite there for socialism in our lifetimes. I also just want to say very quickly that we must be clear, comrades, that blaming African migrants for the crises in our communities is not just wrong in terms of analysis and the analysis that logic relies on, but it is dangerous. It divides the working class, it lets the real capitalist criminals off the hook, and it protects the system that exploits all of us. And I agree fully with Comrade Linda in asserting that it is not foreign nationals who shut down factories, who cut public budgets, who hike interest rates and policy rates, who privatize our entire lives. It's capital. It's the billionaires, it's the banks, it's the politicians who serve them. And you can kick out all the African migrants and place the spaza shops under South African ownership, but you will still have vast unemployment in this country, and you will have all the same crises that we have now. And so every time we point fingers at migrants instead of the ruling class, we do the work of the ruling class for them. And so we must reject that sort of Afrophobia in its entirety, because we can't afford to be in competition with each other, especially between borders, because capital is united across borders. And so we must recognize that we're in a shared struggle for dignity, for justice, and again, for socialism in our lifetimes. Thanks, Comrade Chair, and thank you very comrades for the space and the time.
Thanks, Comrade Mamdu. Comrade Sizwe, over to you. Comrade Sizwe, are you still there? Can't see.
Don't say I've run away. I'm struggling with this thing. Out.
Sure.
Agree. Well, we're having trouble. No, but let's welcome the engagement, comrades. You see, it's very important that we do this exercise frequently. And for us, we're not here to rebut presenters. We're here to come with solutions that will work for our problem. Chair, I think one of the biggest problems I've noticed there is on conceptual questions. Comrade Zaki makes a mistake, for example, trying to want us to believe that the problems are created by the ANC. You would know that in the 18th Brumaire of the Louis Bonaparte, Marx makes a point there that we're prosecuting a revolution not from self-selected circumstances, or prosecuting this revolution from circumstances already present. Now, the case of capitalism...
Don't lie to us, my brother. Hey, don't lie to us. Okay. Don't lie to us. Don't lie to us.
How? Allow Comrade Sizwe to speak. In fact, you had a chance to raise your hand, you didn't. Comrade Sizwe, proceed.
No, thanks, Chair. Yes, thanks for the protection, Chair. But it's very important to appreciate the circumstances that were prosecuting this revolution, that the crisis of capitalism is not a unique South African experience. It's a global system of capitalism that we're trying to prosecute the revolution under this condition that of our making. And we've been saying, Chair, that we're driven by this thing that is called, Lenin would have said, concrete analysis of concrete situation. Now, even on our conceptualization of the state and the role of the state thereof, Chair, remember I had limited myself to only speak about what are we doing concretely on the ground to respond to this crisis, not the analysis. Now, Chair, our comrades must understand that the state that we entered is a product of the failure of classes to be able to reconcile each other. It's a product of the irreconcilability of class antagonisms. Now, the question that we must engage in is, what then becomes the role of progressives? Komrezaki makes a distinction between progressives and revolutionary in the state. How we understand our role, Chair, which is very important because we have to understand from how we conceived these questions. Our interest, Chair, would be tainting class balance of force in the state in the favor of the progressive. We think of ourselves, Chairperson, as a disciplined force of the left. Now, when we said, as the Institute click in the Free State, that the Free State government must inject 50 billion in infrastructure development, we're trying to respond to all of part of the problem of the crisis. One of the speakers, Chair, for example, says that we were only concerned about EPWP. We're trying to demonstrate here that South African state, there is what we have framed as public sector investment strike. That is as a result of the problems that we face in the state currently. Now, we're just saying, Chairperson, in simple terms, we don't want to entertain the ideological questions because there's no time. And Chair, you must we need more time to explain these things because comrades must understand the rationale and why we're trying to do certain things. Now, the Free State has a problem of 600,000 of young people today who are unemployed. Comrades, people are not fighting for ideas. We're fighting to win material benefits, as Cabral used to say. Comrades Chwana comes with concrete proposals. He says to us, let's create youth enterprise development hubs to respond to this crisis of youth unemployment. Let's create, Comrade Machele says to us, let's review our macroeconomic policy framework. We agree with those things, comrades. The other comrade says, let's create youth employment account. Comrades, what everybody is saying here in simple terms, theory that does not have action is sterile. We can theorize as much as we want, but what is concrete today is that there are in the province that I mean, there are more than 300,000 of young people who are not in education, who are not in training, who are not in employment. And you must come with proposals. Chair, we don't want to brag here, but from all the presentations, is the only ANC clique that is answering the question on what is to be done, or what are we doing to resolve these questions. Comrade Zaki did not say here that the organization that I am from, this is what we're doing to resolve on problems of youth unemployment. Total to what we can refer to as an armchair critique. Here, comrades, the revolution would not be won just reading books. We need men who are brave. Even Karl Marx himself, that you claim, organized the first international. Lenin, that you claim that Lenin organized the second Comintern. You cannot, the Paris Commune, the first workers' parliament, the first workers. So, comrades, the EFF, for example, is not saying the youth formation of the EFF is not saying as the youth formation, this is what we have done as a youth month program. Besides telling us about Cyril Ramaphosa, comrades, tell us of what we are doing to resolve these problems. Comrades must be bold enough to say, we're taking our ideas on the ground. You know, comrades, in 2 minutes, I don't want to take forever. Actually, what I notice here is self-preservation. You know, comrades are just they love the comfort of sitting in this. The test of you being revolutionary is not just decreeing revolutionarism from your own conferences, but you must test your ideas on the ground. Your ideas, if they are progressive, they must permeate and find resonance amongst the constituents that you claim. We're saying to you, comrades, here that young people in the Free State turned out in numbers yesterday against an austerity budget that we said. So this yesterday against an austerity budget that we said. So this self-preservation, we are the biggest youth formation in the country, not because of history, because we recruits youth every day. We were not the biggest youth formation in 1996. Currently, there is no youth formation as big as the Youth League today. And it is because the Youth League has courage of its conviction to take its ideas and mobilize those to whom it says it represents. So, Chair, we welcome the engagement. We're saying our problem here is our conceptual understanding of the state. And what then becomes